Okay, thank you, Susan. And hi, everybody. Welcome to the BiotensegriTea Party. It is, can you believe it, January 2nd, 2026. So I'd like to start by wishing everybody a happy new year and let everybody who's with us on YouTube know that this is our annual holiday social event. So we're here without an agenda rather than other than talking with each other. We always love to know who everybody is, where they're from, what they're working on, what they're thinking about in terms of biotensegrity. And so that's the general theme of today, mostly a chance for everyone to get to connect. But before we move ahead with that, I would like everybody to know that the Biotensegrid Party is an all volunteer event of the Stephen M. Levin Biotensegrity Archive. And we always take donations. We'll put a link inside the Zoom chat. And if we can also inside the YouTube chat, we'll do that. Um, shall we begin with a toast as usual?
I
Mariana, Mariana, we haven't seen you for quite some time, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but boy, I would love to hear a toast from you if you're up to it.
without any tea or cup because I don't have one. I'm not sure
Oh!
what. Let's toast. Hold on. Let's toast with my model here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a toast to celebrate this community, the beginning of a new year with more learning experiences, sharing the insights that this beautiful science is giving us from different perspectives, and a year of keep growing and keep spreading this beautiful message. So cheers to
Cheers
biotech.
to all.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Mariana. Such grace when you're put on the spot like that. We appreciate it. So, without further ado, Susan, we haven't discussed who's facilitating this call. Do you want to step forward and do that?
We've got so few people, but probably, well, I'm wondering if we could experiment with just people turning off their, turning on their mic when they want to say something. And if we have too many people talking on top of each other, we can always ask people to raise hands. But I would like to ask anybody who's new or relatively new to tell us, if you don't mind, who you are, where you're coming in from, and what your interest in biotensegrity is. Um, Paul, have you been here before?
Paul?
Hey, no, I was just moving because I have to keep quiet for somebody who's on another Zoom call with a partner.
Oh, oh, oh.
I haven't been here before. I've been excited to join. So, hello everyone. I've watched a few of the YouTubes of the discussions before, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Where are you coming in from?
Los Angeles.
Well, welcome. And
Thank you.
what is your focus or whatever? How did you find out about biotensegrity?
Um, I think I first heard of the concept of tensegrity from an article when I was in college in the 90s. That I, I believe it was written by Tom Myers in like Scientific American or something like that. And fast forward about 10 years, I trained as a rolfer and I've been doing body work related to that for 20 years. And um, and Tai Chi for about 12 years. And the connections just keep
Yep.
growing, and it's just really exciting. I have a lot of questions, and I'm grateful to be in the presence of Dr. Levin, and yeah, good talk. Yeah,
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining
thank you.
us. Chris, hi.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from Germany, And I'm very humbled and happy to be able to be here and see all these people some of them I know only from books, and that's always something that makes me very humble. My English isn't all that good, beg your pardon. And I studied with Maren Deal a little bit, well, actually a lot. And I'm really into biotensegrity in horses, horseback riding, or working with horses. And I tried to kind of bring that idea and that paradigm into the horse world in Germany, much smaller, but a little bit like Marin does. And like I got really frustrated in the last year just because it's so, I guess you can relate. It's just so tiring. And over here in Germany, we have this group that does tensegrity therapy, and it doesn't have anything to do with biotensegrity. It makes me really angry. So it's really difficult because the word is just is nothing worth anymore because everybody thinks of these tensegrity therapy people, and so it really got me frustrated. And over the holidays, I decided I cannot give up. So that's why I'm here, and I hope to learn, and I'm really motivated.
So are you a trainer, Chris?
No.
No.
No, I'm just a horse person. I'm actually an animal communicator in terms of making the tiniest bit of money with it. And other than that, I'm a psychologist in my professional work, and I've got a little bit of experience in Qigong, which relates to the Tai Chi that we heard about from Paul. I think that's an area that has a lot of connection to biotensegrity. Professionally, I don't do all that much, like I don't know, half a day per week with the horses, but doesn't prevent me from being motivated.
That's great.
Thanks a lot that I can be here.
Of course. Um, Mark, I know you've been here before. I can't remember where you are coming in from.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm in from Atlanta, Georgia, and I helped pioneer an area called functional neurology. So I specialize in brain rehab with vertigo and concussions and such. But before my chiropractic degree, I was also a massage therapist. So I integrated all my soft tissue work into some pretty advanced neuro rehab. And of course, this organization is always a group that I want to spend more time with. And so I'm glad to be able to jump on in the new year and and hang out and always just wanting to learn more about this perspective.
That's great. Tara Steppenberg, I haven't seen you in so long. You're so wonderful to be here. How's it going?
Um, Pretty well. I mean, yes, I mean, everything's going pretty well. I have my own little body issues. I normally work during this time, so I don't get to be here, but today I don't. So I thought, oh, I'm going to step on. I'm happy to see Diane and you and all the people here. So I still do Pilates. And communicate some information related to this to my clients, and I work with dancers, and so this perspective is new for many of them and so very, very important. So,
Yeah, it's really
yeah.
interesting how um when I look around on Amazon at different Amazon around the world sites, when I check on my book, um, it's the dance community is one of the communities that um, that's buying my book, and not many
Okay.
people are. So
Oh, good.
interesting to me and I don't know how it's propagating through, but I'm glad it is.
Yeah.
And Betsy, I don't remember where you're coming in from.
I'm coming from Malibu Canyon, California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Several people from California today. That's great.
Yeah.
And how did you find out about biotensegrity?
Well, I've known about tensegrity for a long time, since the 80s, I think. And when I was younger, I was a dancer, and then became involved in the Alexander technique. And that's where I bumped into tensegrity, like I say, probably in the 80s. And then I started working more. I work with performers. I was a professor at Boston University for 25 years in theater and music. But I became more interested in sort of how the body it functions well. And I worked with breathing because I work with singers. But then 25 years ago, I became interested in somatic trauma work, and I trained in that. So now I include, and I know that this group is not particularly interested in trauma, but I just kind of want you to know that I present at major trauma conferences all over the world, and I bring my tensegrity and I explain that this is how our system really wants to function, and of course with trauma, there's bracing patterns and all kinds of deviations from that. So like I say, just to let you know that the trauma world is hearing about tensegrity and biotensegrity, and I include it in my books, which some of them are best-selling books. And so they're pictures of my tensegra toy, which I've had for years, is in. So like I say, I'm not exactly part of this, but I am doing my part of talking about tensegrity, because I certainly know that that is what's happening in biotensegrity. So thank you, Dr. Levin, for all your um, presentations. And actually, I can tell you one story that might be interesting to you, Dr. Levin. A woman studied when I was an Alexander teacher, solely. A woman studied with me named Shohan Kuhn, and she happened to be the wife of Tom Kuhn. And so she actually had Tom come for an Alexander lesson with me a couple of times when I lived in Boston and they lived in Cambridge. So I can't remember. I've always had the tensegrity hanging in my studio. So who knows if he saw it or what, if we talked about it back then, but it was there.
The world is much smaller than I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. So thank
Now,
you.
when you say tensegra toy, do you mean, Betsy, the squish, like the baby toy with the
No, not the squish. This is an actual.
Oh, you've got the actual, I see it. That's a tensegra toy, all right.
Yeah, I think I think they came out in like 1988.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think these are beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so that's when I travel, though, I travel with a smaller version, because I have to put it together for each presentation. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, thank you.
Hello, is it all right for me to speak? I was really interested in what you said, but hello, everybody.
Adam, thank you for your donation.
It's my pleasure. It's a wonderful work that you're creating, and we always need a structure to share ideas. And I was very interested in what Betsy and I can't see the other guy because I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic. I can't. Well, what you were saying, Betsy, about your ideas about how trauma can be linked to this work, and I personally am very interested in that as well. The idea that the natural configuration of our systems comes from the principles of biotensegrity, and trauma somehow influences our system so that it can't quite find that relationship to itself, and how if a therapy can help the system or the perception that there's another way of being, we can get out of the way, and it's a natural return towards balance. And the system's just waiting to realign itself, but it's just a question of finding a way to do that. And I was really interested in what you were saying.
Yeah, when I present the idea of tensegrity and biotensegrity, people's eyes just open, like, because it gets so stuck in this perspective, and it's a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere. And to give them an idea that there's another possibility is really, really exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. And at the same time, it's like Chris was saying, it can be a bit frustrating because you can say, look, have you thought about this? And everyone goes, no, let's talk about something else. It's like, but it's very nice to hear that you're spreading the word, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think, Adam, when you give them a physical experience of, like, feel this in your body and feel that in your body, then
Yes.
it's like, oh,
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. Like if you explain a concept to someone's mind, it just remains a concept. But we are sensory objects, even though although we've shut off a lot of that, we are sensory beings. And if we can find a way to share, just as Susan's developing this idea of, let's make a model, let's see what it feels like to.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think a little bit goes in on some level, and I think it does help people. It would be interesting to see whether, if we ask people who were quote unquote traumatized to a workshop of making models, how they felt before and after they'd actually worked with the principles without even knowing what they were. You don't have to be a scientist to feel the compression and the expansion.
Great idea. Yeah.
Such a good point. I'm always trying to get people to make models for that reason, right? You can feel it in your hands.
Yeah.
Susan, do you do any weave models, or Snelson, has his he makes the point that weaving is the mother of tensegrity, or I forget the exact quote, but are there weave model videos or workshops, or?
Yeah, Chris has done quite a bit of that. She's
Chris
done
has
a good.
done.
I've done a lot of crochet models, and as you say that, Jason, it reminds me of being at Nuno Gusmo's studio, and there was a beautiful model of can't don't have the words for it, that Cecilia, who's in a Trailblazers member, had made. And I remember tagging it thinking, oh, we should invite her to come to a Trailblazers meeting and teach this to us. So maybe that's something we could do. Certainly when you're weaving, that in and out is of warp and weft is in the closed kinematic chain patterns that Steve and Susan and Graham talk about, in that each one, well, depends on the angle really, but mostly they're 4-bar closed kinematic chains. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Tea Party, Jason, with the crocheting and the coral reefs and stuff? Margaret Berthium and Dinah, is it? I'm trying to remember her name, Chris.
Yeah, it's that is it. But I'll look up her last name. The other person or people that you want to reach out to and look for their Tea Party is Christian, because he very, very conscientiously uses weaving as his language, even when constructing his tensegrity bugs or cells and bugs. So he's carrying that through. Tamina, Dana Tamina.
Yes.
Your last name.
Lovely.
She is. She's a mathematician, and we did the not only is there a Trailblazers meeting, did we do a, I mean, excuse me, a tea
We
party?
did a tea party. Yeah.
She did a tea party.
Yeah. They did it. And it was,
Did she do a Trailblazers meeting too?
I don't
I
remember.
can't remember. Everything blurs.
For anybody who doesn't know, Trailblazers is a Chris Marita Clancy here has a educational platform, Embodied Biotensegrity, and anybody who wants to geek out more about biotensegrity, I highly recommend you check it out.
Thanks, Susan.
Susan Koenig. Hey, by the way, I thanked Adam for his donation. A number of you here have been donating, and I appreciate it. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for yours, Susan. What do you have to say? You've got your hand up.
Welcome to 2026. I love this group and the discussions. I jotted a few things down that have been on my mind in relationship to biotensegrity. I'll just reel them off. I love the discussions and the depth of the discussions and how interesting they are. This is in no particular order. One of the things I'm interested in terms of biotensegrity is we are always talking about biotensegrity and the spatial domain and dimension, but we don't really talk about the temporal domain. And after all, time and the temporal domain are absolutely part of cosmology and physics in every form. And I think there's probably, not that I know how to do it, but probably wonderful ways to start exploring the temporal domain in terms of biotensegrity. Another thing I'm interested in is biotensegrity and intuition. Another thing I'm interested in is when we are talking about biotensegrity and we are referencing, as Susan often does, and others, about the physics of living soft matter. I love that. That is, from my understanding, and I'm totally want to be corrected if I'm incorrect, but that is still very much couched in third person data perception, science perception, which is great. I love the science of it. But how do we bridge the gap to my first person somatic experience of biotensegrity? So we can talk about CKCs and foams and soft packing and low energy productive resolutions to things. And that is all probably ways to measure it in terms of academic physics and very important. But when I am moving and thinking about my biotensegrity self, I'm in my somatic self, I'm in my first person somatic experiencing and bridging that gap between the quote objective physics and the somatic first person experience. And I'll name just one other thing I'm interested in is I like scientific podcasts. I listen to them periodically, and they even very avant-garde people always reference, like people in, I don't know really what the name of it is, but they're in like biocosmology physics, and they're interested in the questions of what is life and how do we approach the idea of life. They still always reference the brain, the mind, cognitive ability. Nobody talks about the body as if you can develop a mind or cognition or a brain without a body, if the body is never part of it. And I'm just, why don't they see the why they might develop a substrate of a body and then they'd never talk about it. So those are some of the things I'm interested, and I'm really glad to be here.
All right. May, you've got your hand up next.
Oh my goodness. Hi. Caught me just in time. How is everybody? It's so nice to see everyone. I miss talking with you guys and I don't usually have time. So happy New Year. Lovely to see you. So I decided I was going to take 2 weeks off and not work. And I had a ball of yarn. Not a ball of yarn. It wasn't a ball. It was a bunch of yarn. And I decided I was just gonna like unravel it for no reason. And of course, I found like, oh my God, I learned so much because the little fibers got stuck on each other because they were bound in this knot for so long, like just like bundled together, not even if they were knotted. Yes, a complete analogy to the body. But then it also really cool that when I unraveled one little knot, it would suddenly let go of a whole like 2 feet of yarn. And I just thought that was like so really cool to think about how that might be analogous to working on the body, to working on fascia, to unwinding restrictions. So that was just super cool. And I wanted to say that because you were all talking about weaving. So that was one thing. And then I think, oh my God, was it Susan that just spoke about how to somatics experience? The other Susan? Anyway, so I just also want to say, like, yeah, I that is what I keep trying to work on is how to take what we learn in science and bring it to the body. And one of the most, as you guys probably know by now, one of the fun ways that I do it is using choreography scores. We just like make a score about, okay, I am going to explore this scientific or biotensegrity concept and make movement out of it. So that's just that's what I was thinking about. Thank you. Oh, can't hear you. Good.
Yes. Adam, go ahead.
Oh, hopefully this all links into some sort of pattern. There's I don't know how many of you know that about a principle of acupuncture on the skull to particularly tune in to there's part, you know how acupuncture works on pathways in the body. However, they're formed in different ways, but one way of looking at it is connective tissue. Anyway, there's a system of acupuncture on the skull to work with neurological, physical imbalances. Okay, I did a course with a lady called Suzanne Ribadou, who's Canadian, and she lives and studies in China with this very specific way. So what she does is someone comes along, they've had a physical imbalance, like a can't move, can't hear particular things, lack of spatial awareness, movement, all neurological things like Susan was talking about. And she needles at particular places in the skull that where the brain motor function enables that movement to take place, okay? And at the same time, she asks the receiver to imagine that thing that they can't, that physical thing that they can't do or hear or move, can work. So she's asking the brain and the system to activate the neural pathway and the physical connection in the body to make the movement, although in theory it can't. Now, the needle creates electrical current in the brain, which acts as a bridge to enable the thought pattern to re-establish a physical connection in the body. And guess what? It uses the principle of biotensegrity because what's happening is the body's looking for the most efficient way to transfer the information across. So it all links together in a really beautiful package. Does that make sense to everyone, or am I talking too complicated? Am I talking about too many things at the same time? Because I think about lots of things at the same time together, and sometimes when I'm explaining something, I miss a bit out. So I apologize if I have. So does that make sense? So our thought pattern is generated into a muscular movement via the efficiency of biotensegrity. When we've had an injury or a stroke or something, that thought pattern is interfered with. As in, you could call it trauma. It doesn't have to be a mental trauma, it can be a physical trauma. if we can reintegrate, if you can reallow that electrical pattern to remanifest in the brain, it can bypass the bit of the brain that says it doesn't get the signal, and it recreates a way of moving. It's a very, very effective, simple way to help people. Now, I'm not an acupuncturist. I use physical touch. So I use the same points on the head, but I can just touch them. The electricity comes from the touch and my connection with the person. So some people think that doesn't work. I know that it does. So it's about using Dr. Levin's idea of we're a stretched, compressed system, which is carrying this electrical current and system around. Just by touching it, you're altering the voltage, you see, and that enables the system to start to begin to repair itself. So that links into about 4 different things we've all been talking about. I hope that made sense to you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it makes sense that you can treat one part of the body and have another part be affected because it's all connected.
Yes.
Biotensegrity explains that, how that's possible. Mariana, can you be a hostess for us for a few minutes? I've got to, there are some people on YouTube and I want to connect with them as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would guess Jason comes next. Any comment? I don't know, like we are just commenting, or should we encourage a discussion about the topics? Susan, what do you think?
It's a party. We can do whatever we want.
Okay. So anybody wants to reply to Adam before we move to Jason? Yes, Susan, go ahead.
Adam, are you saying needles are penetrating the bone and going into the brain?
No, not at all. It's just very, very gentle. You have to be an experienced acupuncturist.
So just through the fascial membrane layers.
Exactly. And what it does is it creates an electrical current that goes into the brain to help the synapses recreate an electrical pathway which fires the system with how the electrical system works in the brain.
And how does she differentiate that it isn't the imagination taking over? Once there's some sort of piezoelectrical stimulation, no matter where it is, and she's having them imagine it, how is she attributing the effect of it to the actual acupuncture versus the imagination?
Well, it doesn't matter because the person is healed. So there's this link between our thought pattern and our physical ability to connect and move our body. I can think, close your fist, and you can ask your fist to close. But what about if you don't close your fist and you just lie there and think, close your fist? Over a period of time, the same muscles will start to fire.
But you're saying it's a consequence of the needling, and I'm questioning, is it really the consequence of the needling?
Well, that's the open.
Okay. No, it's very interesting, but
it's not the consequence of the needling. The needling is creating a response in the brain. So I can do it with touch. I don't have to. You just have to create the electrical current. It's the needling isn't the precursor. It's the interaction that's the precursor.
I guess we're good then. Okay, Jason, you're next. Thank you, Adam and Susan.
Thanks, Mariana. And just going back to the weaving, and this question is for Dr. Levin, I guess. And I apologize if it's not very well formulated, but for example, the tensegritoy model, and a lot of the models that we build are, pre-cut dowels, and it's easy to put the strings in and etc. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how, the first biotensegral structure might have happened in nature. And in Snelson's Weaving PDF, he talks about, these loops that get folded over themselves, and the warp and the weft create themselves naturally. Um, the and how then, that tensegral structure, happens in the cell, or, uh, smaller structures without a builder or an engineer cutting the compression element for the tension element to be embedded in it. I'm just, trying to make the leap from the model to, a biologic structure.
Dr. Levin, you're muted.
It's the second law of thermodynamics. Everything goes to its lowest energy state, and if you're being compressed and you're pushing out to keep from being squashed, you have tension and compression, which is part of the system. You're going to want to eliminate shear because it's energy wasting, and so that it will generate itself. So that I think it's a self-organizing system. And again, the thing is, we think of dealing in structures, and really we're dealing in patterns. And the pattern is what develops itself. Um, a few weeks ago, I talked about standing waves of energy. And since then, if you start reading, it's all over the place. The most recent issue of the Journal Atlantic uh, had an article about essentially standing waves, energy patterns, that biological structures, living structures, are not structures, but energy patterns that then control organisms, whatever structure it is. So it's the pattern that we develop, and it's an energy thing. It's the most energy efficient pattern, and that's how it generates itself. So the standing wave concept is very interesting. I don't know if I talked about it. It has to do with in in water and flowing rivers, for instance. There's a wave that develops without a pattern, with that works almost as a solid and a structure, and you can, actually float a boat on top of it and it holds it. But of course, the water is constantly changing in it. So the material itself is in a constant state of flux while the pattern it remains as a constant. And I said there are more and more people now accepting this as a concept for life. So we have to stop thinking, although it's a structure that we develop, it's really the pattern that's important. Does that help or confuse things more?
I mean, it definitely helps, and I
Let me
appreciate.
just say the article is called "The Truth That Physics or Physicists Can No Longer Ignore" in the Atlantic. That's the article he's talking about.
Right.
Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I take what you're saying, Dr. Levin, as a lesson in how to think about the issue and the problem. Um, I I I do think at some point, you know, um, you know, you to go from the pattern to, matter, like I'm just, you know, and that energy gradient, if you like, of the second law, and looking for that as well. But we build these tensegrity models, and we are, doing the assembly, in biology, it's self-assembly. And I'm just wondering, how the tension and compression elements, first, got together. I guess I don't know.
There
You
are,
know,
the origins of life are still really not understood, and there are lots of people who are trying to understand the origins of life. And I think it's now moving now from structure to energy pattern. There's an energy force that does it at some level or other, but I don't think we understand it yet. I don't know if we'll ever understand it. But instead of thinking in terms of material, you have to think of terms of energy forces. And this is a balance of forces. So we keep making these structures out of material, but we really are representing energy forces in the structure, and that the material just sort of fills in the spaces as we make them. So your cells are constantly changing. The chemicals in your body are constantly changing. You don't have the same cells today that you did yesterday. And so things are constantly, the material part of your body is in a constant state of flux, while the energy patterns pretty much stay the same, at least from day to day. They change over the years, but from day to day, the energy patterns are pretty much the same, and that gradually change over years. But it's the energy flow that's more important than the actual materials.
okay. Just a follow-up. Susan Koenig talked about intuition. Do you have thoughts on like the biotensegral origin of consciousness and the role
No.
of consciousness in the understanding of that energy or that structure?
Well, these are, we're talking about oscillations, oscillators, and oscillators do all these things. So if we got this oscillator, it's an energy, another energy form. And I don't, that kind of thing is way deeper than I ever work. You know, we were talking about trauma before. I started out as an orthopedic surgeon. That's where I was enmeshed in trauma stuff, and that's where I got the physical thing. And it's only once I got the physical structure for the spine, I immediately recognized that I had to go down all the way down to the subcellular level. But I don't understand that stuff. It's way beyond my comprehension. You know, uh, but I understand that's where it is. And I understand this concept of the energy flow is also, this is physics that I don't know anything about except in theory, in a big grosser concept of it. But yeah, it's down there someplace or other. And it's way beyond my where I am. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. Orthopedic surgeons are not known for their brilliance. They're mechanics, and I'm basically a mechanic.
And I would suggest I put it in the chat, but check out the work of Michael Levin. He's doing a lot of
Yeah,
consciousness in the body stuff. Really, really
no
interesting.
relation except
No
very distant, probably. Come from the same tribe,
relation.
going
And
back centuries.
Marco, thank you for putting that link to the Adam Frank article in the chat. I appreciate it. All right, Diane, you're up.
I'm just thinking aloud about from from Susan's, from the weaving, and into the body. I'm interested particularly in the semiconduction factor of the collagen and the way the movement conducts within itself, and the way it changes things in the body, because um, this is where we have the power to change things, is through movement. The quality and function of life is changed by movement at every aspect of changing the body, the shape. Um, Biomechanics is all very, especially having to do with what goes on at the gym and all that. We change the way the body looks. You want the aesthetics to change and all of that, but mo that happens with whole body movement. So if you focus, if you get away from the the fragments, we're moving the fragments. Never use Bob. That's not useful. Working the fragments, but working the whole and allowing the whole, encouraging the whole to go through this power of communication and connectedness within the body. It does it when you open that door. And we close the door when we go to single joint movement on a Cybex or whatever machine that measures it, and so forth. We don't need that. We need to go into the power of that whole body movement. So I can look at a sequence like X and O and say, what is there to understand? It has everything to tell the body. So just use the movement and don't worry about whether or not it's communicating. It is.
Carol, I think you're up. Thanks, Diane.
Well, I'd like to go back to Jason's conundrum. And I think that the way I've handled this concept of how do we take this and make it come alive in our understanding from the micro, from the cell inside the nucleus all the way out to the cosmos. And I'm reminded that this is just a model. This is just a map. It's not the territory. And the description that I've adopted, with some controversy, of course, comes from Brian Swim and his journey of the universe, and his concept of how it all started. And so, Jason, when I have to teach about this, about biotensegrity, I sometimes don't know where to start, but I don't want to start with this, because that to me distorts what I'm trying to talk about. And what I'm trying to talk about is how does a living structure find its shape? And I think that was your question too. And what we know now from what I agree with, and what Steve has taught, and what biotensegrity teaches, is that this is a model of an energy field. And I'm much more interested in the energy field. And how did that get started? How does that get into the salamander? And I bring up the video, that wonderful video of the egg of the salamander developing and multiplying into 2 and then 4 and then 8 and then 16 and so forth. And I say, what's driving that? what is driving that cell multiplication? We used to talk about cell division. What's driving that cell multiplication? And we used to in the old days talk about, well, that's the genetic code that we inherited. And I hold with those that say, no, the genetic code is the instructions, but what drives the instructions? The instructions are something's following the instructions. It's the energy field. And how do we get this biotensegral energy? And I've talked about this a little bit with Steve and Susan, and I used to talk about the fact that at the moment of conception, that wonderful model, Jaap van der Wal loves to say that the egg invites one sperm in, invites one sperm in, and when it accepts that one sperm, a cloud of zinc goes out and a light goes off, and then we get fertilization. All the other sperm die. And all of a sudden we have the push-pull of the male element and the push-pull of the female element coming together not as four, but a new two of push-pull in this zygote. And that new push-pull is what follows the instructions of the DNA to start the development process. And where does that push-pull come from? And Steve was kind of intimating this, I think, and I hold with those who talk about the Big Bang. Not everybody does, but I love that idea of, and so does Brian Swim, of in one moment, a small neutron explodes out from nothing into vast amount of spiraling energy out into the cosmos. So the energy is pushing out and spiraling all around, but at the same time, four fundamental forces come into play at that moment. And the four fundamental forces that nobody argues about, of course, are electromagnetism, gravity, strong and weak nuclear forces, and all of them are working together. So we have a spiraling out of energy, and then at the same time, a gravity pulling in. And all of a sudden, I can see the fractals. I can see the spiraling out and the fractals of the spirals. And then I can feel the gravity pulling back in. And to me, that's the model that comes alive energetically from that moment of conception. That piece that started, 13 billion years ago, that started at that moment, somehow has as a part of it this orchestra of compression and tension that work together in these spirals that constantly are moving in balance with each other, that following the DNA of whatever the structure, whether it's a plant or a tree or a salamander or a chicken or a dog or a cat or us, that DNA is directing that spiraling energy to form in its initial stages. And I really get off on that. I can't tell you whether it's true or not.
Dr. Davis, thank you.
It just makes my heart sing to think that that might be true.
Yeah.
And, I love it.
Susan Crawford Young had a paper on gravity and tensegrity, and she referred to, and I'd have to go back and read it, but I remember it twigged, this connection between fractal expression and gravity. And so maybe I'll go back and read that. Thank you.
Jason, if you find it, you could put a link to it in the chat if you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Paul, you're up.
Thank you. Something that's a fascinating discussion and lots of overlapping connections. There's the question that I have, and well, 2 points. The first that I just want to connect to the second, I think it was Adam brought up acupuncture on the skull and a discussion and theory about bioelectric fields relating to tensegrity. So that raises the question, and Dr. Levin, I think, referred to it a little bit, saying that it's not his field, but it raises the question of what, for me, of what, if any, research is being done on electricity and bioelectricity in relation to tensegrity. And separately, or kind of separately, a burning question for me has been a lot based on my own experience, my own sense experience, whether there is any discussion of resonance or resonators in tensegral systems. I was excited to hear the term oscillation or oscillatory structures. I forget exactly what you said, Dr. Levin. But just considering this tension compression system in fractal groupings of tiny to large, it stands to reason to me that any one of those levels and all of them together could be seen as being able to be tuned in a way, in a acoustic resonance. And I'm not a scientist, but I imagine there's other kinds of things that would fall under the category of resonance. And just briefly, like my experience in my own body practices for myself, and also with my work with clients and trainings that I've been in, there's often a feeling of listening with the body that isn't a metaphor, that feels acoustic and intuitive, and feels almost like my body is an eardrum. There's a wonderful teacher that I've trained a bit with, who was teaching a particular kind of work, and as he was demonstrating, he got into a position that was very much like a qigong or tai chi structure, tai chi posture. That wasn't really the focus. It's just kind of how he arranged his body when he worked. And somebody asked him the question, what are you doing with your hands? Because his hands would kind of adjust a little bit while he was working, and was sort of listening with his body. And he said, I'm looking for the appropriate superficial tonus in my body. That rang a bell for me, both conceptually and in my own experience. And again, it got me connecting with this idea of tuning one's body as a kind of resonator. And just really curious if there's any discussion of that in the biotensegral field.
A lot. Paul, I think you'd be really interested in the class that Mariana and Carol teach, applied biotensegrity in physiotherapy. There's a lot of talk. Well, Carol can talk to you about resonance for probably a few days. And, and Marianne and Carol both, and in that class they talk about the client therapist relationship and getting on the same wavelength. I'm not putting it the right way, but that light touch that does the connection where the two are one system, which of course you see with Tai Chi partner work as well, and all of that. So yeah, a lot. I would highly recommend that you check out. They did the first big on physiotherapy, and that's on the archive YouTube channel. And they also did a tea party, the whole faculty group of 8. And I think you'll find a lot there. Um, Mary Beth, I know
Cool,
you've been
thank you.
waiting to ask your question, and then we'll see some of Stroopy's weavings. That's going to be so cool. Anyway, Mary Beth, you're up.
All right, thank you so much. I'm so new to this. I'm kind of nervous to even speak because it's I've only been introduced to this only a couple of years ago, which drives me crazy because I've been practicing and doing yoga for 30 years and had no sense of what all this was until just recently, and it seems to just fit in with what I'm up to. I'm a yoga therapist. I've been specifically working with people with osteoporosis and forever just not jiving, and none of the models from yoga jibe with the biomechanics of how to move. If you have osteoporosis, they kind of work more on a biomechanic way of thinking of the spine as a stack of bricks, and you could fracture if you fold over. And I'm like, that's not the case. So biotensegrity answers a lot of questions for me, but now of course brings up a lot more questions. And I don't even know exactly what my specific question is today, except that all of this, the trauma, the diminishing of the microarchitecture in the bones, I'm having a sense that if we can enliven the body a bit more through presence, through movement, through whatever, that we can still safely move, even if our bones have diminished. And some of the studies out there that say that you can build bone density by getting stronger through the muscles, I think has a lot more to do with this tension and compression more than just, strengthening the muscles, obviously. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. Dr. Levin or anyone else can share any insights that can help me continue down this path.
Well, bone is under compression from within by the muscle tension itself pulling on the bone and compresses the bone. And also gravity. So you have really two forces that are compressing your bone. But the bone is compressed by the tension of the soft tissues. And that's what's doing. So this, if you want to strengthen the bone, the
Don't have
most
any
dense bones
niece.
are in weightlifters. They're the ones who have the densest bones because their muscles get bigger, but it's the tension of the whole system that compresses the bone. It's an interaction of the two. So in order to get strong bones, you have to have tight muscles and tension of the system and vice versa. In order for the tissues to get it in place, they have to have strong bones. So there's some recent studies now that weightlifting and muscle strengthening is good for us old folks, that we have to do more of that and less of focus more on the actual strengthening and weightlifting and that type of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. And sorry, go ahead.
well, again, there's a reciprocal between structure and forces. And I don't know which comes first in a sense. It's an interaction of the structure and the forces are interacting with each other. So that in order to have a structure, it's the forces that create this tension compression thing. So that becomes that standing wave and there's a pattern, but that creates a structure. And then the structure, so it's an interplay between the structure and the forces. But more of us now, I think it's mostly the forces that create the structure, and then they interplay with one another.
Yes. Yeah, I get that. And I'm also bringing it into the consciousness realm because yoga's models have a sort of 5 dimensions of understanding the human system, where there's a physical piece of it, there's a physiology, and then there's 3 aspects of the mind. There's the thinking mind, the behavioral mind, and the emotional mind. And there's been studies out of Harvard with Ellen Langer about how the mind the mindset can change the physiology or change the structure, change, people can be under the, basically the placebo effect, that they can have effects on their body by believing that there's going to be effects. So, I mean, I'm just kind of bringing that all out there, that this is all fascinating to me, and that's and you're all kind of touching on things that I feel like the yoga world is also touching on. And yeah,
Mary Beth, you're starting a doctorate program.
I am. Yeah. And
can you tell us again what it's in?
It's in a doctorate of longevity arts and sciences out of the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology at USC. I'm going to start that in this month. So,
all right. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. So anyway, thanks. And it's really wonderful to be part of these conversations.
Thank you. Hey, Stroopy, I'm going to highlight you for everybody. Guys, I've been a fan of Stroopy and his work for the longest time. You are about to see some very cool weaving. I'm gonna turn it over to you. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, sounds about right. It's good to meet you. It's been a while since I've been following these parties on YouTube, kind of remotely, sort of. But it's a pleasure to finally make it into the conversation, and even with the cat in a prime spot up there. Yeah, it's just great to finally get in a foot into the door with your community, because from what I could tell, there's a lot of connections between our work, in a way, between our playgrounds. I do come from music and dance, like traditional music and dance of this part of Europe, but also later on capoeira. And when I got through permaculture into synergetics via the geodesic domes, my first experience of creating one such structure was unlike everything other related to construction I had done in my life before, and much more closely similar to the dance, the music, the play of balance and tension that I was attuned to by many years of playing by heart. And so I got attracted to that and looked deeper into it and submerged myself in synergetics and yes.
Sorry, what country are you coming in from?
I think they call this place Germany. So but it's not far to Poland that way. So oh, that way. I'm looking that way. Yeah, anyways.
And can you show you've got them all hanging up behind you?
Oh, I've got more of them sitting around actually. I'm more or less drowning in them.
And these are all woven together.
Yeah, in one way or another. So I'm practicing synergetics, which may or may not be something you're familiar with. I guess you are, because tensegrity is so integral to synergetics, because it helped Bucky Fuller, who came up with synergetics, and probably in the interplay with many other minds, helped him to give a very good understanding and way of comprehension for what synergetics is about, that dynamic interrelationship, which I would like to offer the word compendence for, if you like, because all these words of dependence, interdependence, independence, and so forth are coming from this false notion of one hanging off of another, depending, whereas in my sense of the whole, which is influenced by Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu, by lots of other things, by animism, David Abram, maybe a familiar name. I've been integrating all of these things, and in my mind, it's clear that life is not a game of dependencies, but compendence, which is a word I've reconstructed, rewove, basically, because it's people know the compendium, So the notion is there, but the word means to hang together, right? Pendulum is in there, the pendants.
Yeah.
And then the compendence means to hang together, to belong together as well, right? Which is, I think, what is so clear in tensegrity as a physical manifestation of the very principles we are familiar with as gravity and so forth. And I think what you are all particularly into is the understanding within the realities of our bodies, how these structural patterns of interrelationship come to play. And I am doing that as well, but I'm also really deep into having familiarized myself with what I call the way of the spheres, spherical thinking, spherical being, which is a way of not, of being without the box for once, because that is really what synergetics gives us as well. These frames of minds that you've been discussing, like the last thing I've heard along here was this notion of a stack of bricks in the spine. They call it a column. Same thing in German, but actually it's a chain, right? It's more akin to something like this, which is one such weave of a beaded. I would call this an endotensegrity, if you like. So there's one string running through all of these beads, and what I do is I tie them into triangles, and what I get is something that is very much stable and strong and very, very
It's like you could turn it
resilient.
inside out.
Yeah, this one can't, but I do have those as well. I do I do have lots and more, and lots of them are hanging around here, others are other places.
There we go. That's nice. Show us that a little more slowly.
Yeah, so this is you may recall the jitterbug, which is the central transformation in synergetics of this structure here, which is in synergetics known as the vector equilibrium.
Yes.
I call it the 2008 eyes for good reasons. And this is a version of that same structure in a higher frequency. Basically, it's a play on the 3 frequency, where we're working with a lot more nodes in the system and a lot more connections already, a whole lot more. But I've reduced this to the bare minimum so that I could save some beats. And what this does is, because it's not the complete omni-triangulated, as Bucky would call it, structure, this actually still partakes in that very transformation of that jitterbug, which I call the dance of the Tao. So it does dance one way and the other, as all things do, which gets us to that chirality thing as well, right? This is all Yes, sorry.
When you're doing that, do you feel it getting condensed and expanded as well as spiraling?
Yes. I mean, I can show you if I hold it like this. So maybe horizontal like this. My hands are now the furthest apart. And when I do this, they contract.
Yeah.
And then the other way around, if I get over the threshold, they do the same. So this one has a range of motion between these two extremes, basically.
And almost becomes an octahedron.
Yes, but it's a little too crowded for that. But I have this one here, which is my take on that jitterbug. Again, I prefer calling it the dance of the Tao, but I will keep translating for anyone who's not familiar with my words yet. So this is just the membrane of the vector equilibrium.
Right.
And this one does do the whole.
I think most of us have made one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, it's great to meet you. I'm going to stop spotlighting you because we're theoretically having a whole big party here.
Sure.
But I want to recommend Stroopy's YouTube channel to everyone. He's very generous about teaching how to make these.
Yeah, how to make them, how to make sense of them and all of that, because I want to, I want to help others find into the world that I think we all belong into, where the stuff that you're discussing within the the system of our body is really relevant to our entire being and our entire understanding of self, of other, of the whole. And conventional thinking is incapable of grasping these things because it's using the wrong frame of mind, basically. And what synergetics allows us is to realize both how mistaken that frame of mind is, that is the conventional one, but also to replace it with a felt, embodied understanding of the actual principles by which life plays out in universe. And if you allow me, before I get too
You're
far
going to
off,
show why it's called the vector equilibrium.
Yes, I'll just add this little detail to it because I said this is only the membrane. So these are the centers of 12 spheres, actually. And there's a room in there for a number 13 or a dozen and one, which if I place it in there, I can connect these up. And as I said before with the other one, with the beads, in this case, this tensegrity is paper straws with skewers in them to make them a little longer lasting, pieces of tape in the end of them so they don't rip up. And probably all of these things will find equivalents within our bodies, right? And then we have these the single string that runs through each one of these. So the membrane has one, and the nucleus that I'm adding also has one. I call those the umbilical cords, right? Because I can keep adding one while I'm weaving, while I'm growing a structure. I can keep adding members to it by adding them along that umbilical cord. And once all of these connections are in place, the thing is going to be a little more stable for once, even though this one is a little stretched out. It's getting old. That's what happens. I may have. There's a little bit of minding the pattern going on here. And you spoke about weaving. I do have variations on weaves here. Like this is an example of kagome weave, but done with string. So this is trihexagonal weave, which
Nice.
is structurally sound. Has 3 directions, so warp, woof, and weft in English. And I do weave these all together into what I call tree ships, which is a play on the German word for Raumschiff, spaceship. We can say Baumschiff, which is a tree ship. And this shows a little how I take wood as it grows and tie it together with rope, following those very pattern integrities that then manifest tensegrity without any effort, right? And I think this is one of the many beautiful, profound properties of tensegrity, is that it's basically allowing everybody to come into being without force, right? So in Taoism, they speak of wu wei, of not doing, as they often translate it. But really, it's more like letting be. And to know these ways of the spheres, to understand that leverage, the principle of leverage, actually continues through triangulation into structure, into body, into all of these things, makes us capable of comprehending, grasping, fathoming the way that the whole is structured, and we can play along with that. So now I've put in that nucleus here.
Thank you.
Which gives us the full thing. And it can do more, but I'm gonna.
Thank you, Stroopy.
Yeah.
Jason, go ahead.
So much to unpack there. That was amazing. But I think he talked about the spheres. I'm not sure, but it just reminded me Eichenauer and Lordick had their paper, How Platonic and Archimedean Solids Define Natural Equilibrium Forces for Tensegrity. And it goes from the packing of the spheres. He said that each of these points is the center of a circle. And that's what made me think of it, that you find the Platonic solid or the shape in the close packing, which relates back to what Dr. Levin said about minimal energy, second law, etc. So much stuff there. And I think you mentioned Christian Castro-Arenas earlier. His paper, Platonic Tensegrity's Dynamic Aspects and Characterizations. In that, he talks about the vibration and oscillations, I think. So for the person who mentioned that, I would point them to Christian's work. So yeah, that's all. I just amazing stuff. Thank you, Struby.
All right, we've got about 10 more minutes to go here. If you haven't spoken up, now's a good time. If you don't want to, that's fine as well. I think we've heard from almost everybody who's got their camera on. Your own has been putting a lot in the bye Carol, thanks. Your own, you've been putting a lot in the chat. Did you want to come on and say hello? Jeroen, you have to unmute.
Hi there. Yeah, my battery is almost down, I guess. But I can relate to a lot of the things people are saying about energy, consciousness, even trauma. I'm currently working on trauma being related to our posture, and especially how the pelvis, how we retreat into the pelvis, like when it's a closed protective shell, more or less, instead of weight carrying, weight bearing structure, and that's all related to the myofascial network, and the nervous system is very much an integrated part of that, I guess. So I see a lot of commonalities with biotensegrity informed people like you all. So that would be a short summary of my thoughts right now.
Thanks, Jeroen.
You're welcome.
Hey, Marco, a couple of weeks ago, somebody said that they wanted to hear more about your work and how it related to biotensegrity. And I remember now we said maybe we'll have time during the party. Are you willing to tell us a little about what biotensegrity means in terms of what you do? I know you do several things.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Susan. Yes, briefly, as considering being concerned of time, that we have a bunch of minutes left. I work in anthrozoology, so in the human-animal relationships and conflict, and also interested and involved in somatic practice and training through various disciplines, and also areas I'm involved in majorly in general. So for a while, for a few years now, I'm working on a project called Zoosomatics, which in general looks at animal movements. So ethology is involved, animal behavior is involved, looks at human using animal movements for various reasons, which is something we have been doing for millennia, for various reasons in various cultures. So zoosomatics gathers some knowledge that we have been exploring already through time and cultures, but also try to explore new possibilities, new methods, new techniques, new practices, so that human, by exploring and embodying animal movement, other than human animal movements, can experience some animal perceptions or emotions, whatever that may mean. We don't have time now to go into details, but so what zoosomatics fosters is a shared experience of perceptions with other species, and that has important implications in animal welfare, in animal ethics and discussions and so forth. Now, there are a lot of things happening in zoosomatics, but by focusing on the, let's say, biomechanical aspects of the movement, which is, I'm aware, is not an expression we like here, but just in the biotensegrity biomechanical aspects of it. So in the movement, it's in the dynamic of movements, which also relates to something that other friends have said here, relates to choreography, relates to intuition and so forth. But so when we explore and embody animal movements, what happens, and we can see this through various examples, it may happen a repatterning of our body possibilities, right? So some patterns that we have been establishing in our body or body mind through the vertical approach, through the standing approach, which moves the body center to the hips or to one certain area of the body by, for example, by crawling and sliding and rolling and jumping, by inspired by animal movements, that allows to the reorganization of the movement, right? And which also has an important implication for trauma, for example, and in some therapy contexts. So this is in brief, really in brief. So biotensegrity, of course, is strongly involved in this specific on that specific point, because, of course, it moves the attention of the movement away from verticality and a certain perception of gravity on the vertical line, but it changes all the perspective, and the redistribution of forces get activated through movements that can be inspired by animals. So those are general points, and of course I am here also to learn more and understanding and more in depth some concepts, so that I can clarify with time that those links, which I'm also exploring in the room, in the studio, with people coming at workshops and exploring those possibilities in real moments and so forth. And thank you for your interest, and also the member, it was Jason to express that curiosity, and maybe at some point we can talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marco, you do work helping, do you do work with rescuing dogs or something with wild?
Yes.
Am I
yes,
remembering?
I as an ethologist, or as a human animal interaction advocate and passionate, I have a particular focus on canines in general, so dogs, wolves, and coyotes. And so I've been studying free dogs, free living dogs in various parts of the world, and in particular in Indonesia, Bali, where I've been studying the dogs of Bali, and where I've also been living for a while also. And yes, and some aspects of those research also link to biotensegrity. Maybe at some point we will discuss that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane.
I would just like to follow that up. Thank you very much. How interesting. When we watch our four-legged creatures like cats and such, and we see how amazingly collected they are on 4 feet. And so it helps me to appreciate what we do as floor work in Barteniev fundamentals, because Barteniev was relieving people of the problems of standing and keeping their balance and of managing on 2 feet that weren't working very well to start with, and reconnecting them to their original arrangement in that first year of life, of rolling on the floor and figuring out what to do there, and how that is itself a repatterning process. And it's so important because we are stuck with urban life, which is so limiting for us, which are with our cars and our chairs and our stairwells and all of that kind of thing. We need to recover and rediscover our basics. And Barteniev did that. Barteniev and her students like Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen and all of that, which build and understood what goes on in that first year of life, and how it's so much of a resource for us as we move through, and we move through into a more functional verticality.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thanks, Diane. Well, guys, that was a very fast hour and a half. Would you say?
Mhm. Good, a good hour and a half.
That was
Susan,
great.
before we sign off, I would just like to confirm we're still doing the matching. We had a donor who gave some money for matching. That's still available for people who would
Yep.
like to donate to the archive.
Yep, people who are donating, we're getting matched up to $4,000, and we've got a ways to go before we reach $4,000. So don't hesitate to donate.
Thanks,
Um,
Susan.
and we've got, well, I assume everybody here got the newsletter, so they know about upcoming events. Chris and I have a free thing on the 10th. Questions and answers about advanced concepts in biotensegrity for anyone who's interested. That's ahead of an upcoming course. Jason, did you have a parting word?
Paul in the chat, put a comment about his interest in the concept of resonance and how we perceive shapes through touch and a distance. And so I just wanted to make sure that he knew about the haptic, the papers on tensegrity and haptic perception, and so point him to those.
I don't, but if you would, if you happen to have the link, please put it in the chat. I would love to look at it.
And
Yeah.
I'll
I
Michael
can
Turvey and
Google it,
Fonseca haptic perception, and Dr. Levin wrote a paper in that journal about our internal universe that I would point you to as well.
Yeah, and Paul,
thank you very much.
You can see Michael Turvey doing a talk on YouTube as well. Sergio Fonseca joined us sometime in the last year for a tea party. And that Turvey and Fonseca paper from 2014 was seminal to the whole ecological psychology community getting into biotensegrity. So there's a lot there on haptic perception. Thank you, Jason, for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Oh yes, Stroopy's going to show us one more structure. Hold on. I'm gonna spotlight you, Stroopy.
All right, I'm gonna be quick, just because I think this will resonate, especially with you all. So we've just looked into this jitterbug thing, right? And
Yes.
I suppose you all are familiar with the structures that are in there. So people know them as tetra, octa, icosa, and then the so-called cube octa. I have different names for them. I call them by the numbers of eyes they have. So for me, a triangle is an eye because every triangle really comes from 3 spheres, which open up an opening that we can look through. And there's good reasons etymologically and so forth for that choice. So I speak of the 4 eyes, the 8 eyes, the dozen 8 eyes, and then the 2 dozen 8 eyes. But more importantly, I've got them here because that transformation that is usually in that dance, I've strung it out into a sequence of structures here. And you may notice how this is very much, I speak of these structures as being animate matter, right? Animatter. So structure itself is animate and such can translate into whatever we bind in terms of structures. And I just want to share this because this is the full transformation of the jitterbug. This goes from 1 sphere to the 4 eyes, the tetra, the octa, icosa, the vector equilibrium and the balance, and then back through the icosa, the dozen 8 eyes, and the 4 eyes into the sphere.
Oh, that's great. And that movement that you get from that.
Just because we're talking biotensegrity. Now,
Yes.
imagine putting a pair of wings on this, and it's immediately an insect, right? It's the same sort of system. But also the dozen 8 eyes, the icosa can dimple, right? So as so many other structures, it has some transformations that it can do. And so with that, if we push in, for instance, this here.
Yeah.
Now that to me looks like a bird. And we can do the other end, the tail end. There's some symmetries here. And then we can even go a little bit further and dimple these. And then get this sort of seed, this very compact version of the same. And I just thought, of all people, you probably would enjoy these. And I can only recommend, I've got tutorials on how to weave these things and such. If you're interested in how to weave much simpler, to my mind, kinds of tensegrities, they are really worth getting a hand on. Yeah.
That's really cool because it's you're seeing the kind of viscoelastic fluidic property, but then it can condense and reshape. And of course, we also study something called closed kinematic chains, which everybody who's watching this can
recognizes.
see.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I know you have a different way of languaging it sometimes, but it's great. And I also like the way that you help us out of our kind of habitual language framework of buildings and machines and stuff
Yeah.
and get into
I think we'll when once the paradigm shift that synergetics is holding, waiting for the world to catch up on for 50 years or so, once that is through, I think we will also undergo a change where instead of looking at life through the lens of mechanics, as Stephen did, the mechanic who cuts open and changes the parts or whatever. Once we go through that shift, we'll actually begin to understand technology, machines, and so forth as organisms, right? It's going to be the other way around, and I think we'll all be better off for it.
That will be interesting. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We
All right.
need somebody who can put names on things that we don't have names for yet. And you seem to be just the right person to do it.
Yeah, that's my kind of speciality. And my pleasure
That's great. New paradigm, new words. Paradigm, new words, new year. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you all.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
All right.
To
Happy
you
New
too.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Hope to see you in a few weeks when we have Andre Palat join us.
Great. Happy New Year, everyone. Cheers.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Steve, I'm going to email you a link for the
Susan, would you shut off the YouTube, please?
Yes, sorry. Do that. Let's see. Thank you.